there's a lot of benefits to traveling, which why people travel and why should it be almost a form of therapy for people, for your mental and also for your overall well-being. One of the health benefits, which I don't think people know, it really does reduce the risk of heart disease up to 30% and also lowers the risk of metabolic syndrome and the symptoms of that. So in general, it boosts your immune system overall. And there's many studies that show that after you come home, your stress levels are reduced from anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks after you come back from vacation.
Hi friends, and welcome back to Life Intended. I'm your host, Kelly Berry. Life Intended is a podcast that explores what it means to be true to yourself and live an authentic and purposeful life. Each episode explores my guest's version of personal growth, self-discovery, and the pursuit of becoming the best version of themselves, as well as how to find the joy in the journey. Today's episode is about something I think everybody loves and everybody loves to learn about and talk about, and that is travel. And if you don't love it, I at least encourage you to open your mind and your ears today and hear all of the good things that my guest has to share. Today, I've got Charlotte Tom here with me. Born a Texan, now living in the Sunshine State of Florida, Charlotte, aka Charlee, loves all things travel. Her adventures began 30 years ago when she boarded a cruise trip as an assistant purser, which sparked a passion that continues to this day. With an extensive background in the travel industry, Charlee shares her insights through practical tips, exploring unique destinations, and finding those hidden gems in hopes of inspiring others to pursue their own dream travels. Her professional journey encompasses sailing on cruise ships around the world, managing transportation services in Alaska, leading shore excursion teams, and developing business through sales and marketing, all of which brought challenges and countless adventures. In a quote from Charlee, "I firmly believe there's a big, beautiful world to explore while we are living on planet Earth. Traveling is not only a fantastic way to see the world, but an even better way to connect with new people in hopes of becoming lifelong friends. Travel definitely opens our eyes to so many different walks of life that we would have never experienced in our day-to-day routines at home. Let's inspire one another to travel." Welcome, Charlee. So great to have you here today.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about travel because, yes, I do have a passion for it. I enjoy it, and I really like to inspire people to travel, get out of their comfort zone of being our day-to-day lives, and just to see, like I said in my quote, the big, beautiful world that we have. There's so much to see on our, on our planet.
Yeah. And I love the things that you said about, travel in itself is great and seeing new things and going to these dream destinations. But there's a lot of components of travel and getting out there. It's relationships, it's exposure. I think it's more than just going somewhere to lay on a beach. There's a lot of life enrichment that you can get out of travel. And so I'm excited to dig into that today too.
Yes, exactly. Intentional travel. And today, more than ever, since, basically post-pandemic, a lot of people are now traveling intentionally. So not just to go, obviously we all want to relax, lay on the beach, drink a pina colada, that kind of thing. But a lot of people now, since we were all kind of stuck in our, our four walls, behind our four walls at home, we all kind of opened ourselves up to there is more to life, and maybe intentionally traveling is one of them. Yeah, it's a big push now. After all of that, people really want to, make it, for them, intentionally, but also to share that with others, in their family, or, if they're traveling with their partner, or even, multi-generation families. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I want to get into all of that and just help people think about travel and kind of their strategy as individuals, as families, for what they want travel to look like in their life and the part that they want travel to play. So this is going to be great. And I think you brought some travel stats, right? Can you share some of those with us so we can start off with?
Yeah, I brought a few
Let's get
that
into
kind
them.
of get into the stats of why people. So it's one of the first things, it's ranked as one of the most enjoyable activities globally. And like I said, these days, many travelers are looking to travel for mindfulness and even meditation trips, retreats, health getaways for both the mental and physical health when it comes to travel. And like I just mentioned, with being post-pandemic, I mean, we had kind of a travel, everybody was behind closed doors and nobody traveled because they were obviously afraid to travel. And then when everything kind of opened up, it went like bonkers. So we had a lot more people traveling. And, there's a lot of benefits to traveling, which I think that if you wanted to get into why people travel and why should it be almost a form of therapy for people, there's a multitude of benefits for your mental and also for your overall well-being. One of the health benefits, which I don't think people know, it really does reduce the risk of heart disease up to 30% and also lowers the risk of metabolic syndrome and the symptoms of that. So that is one of the health benefits, which I think a lot of people don't even think about, because obviously when you're at home and you have all that stress, this, just traveling kind of, if it's a vacation, it does kind of get you to relax a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of health benefits. I guess if you are doing like a health retreat or a meditation retreat or something like that, obviously I would think that has health benefits, but I guess I wouldn't have just thought as adding travel into your life necessarily would especially have that kind of impact. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So some of the benefits of traveling, which people don't, I think people do probably think about it maybe subconsciously, but not consciously, that one of the first things is it reduces your stress. So like people, obviously in our daily lives, we have the pressures of a career, of a family, of, just your everyday life. And that really, travel takes us away from that. So the daily routine that we have kind of pulls us away. So you have to be immersed in where you are, and it changes your daily routine, so to speak, and distracts us from some of the stresses. So in return, it helps reduce our cortisol levels, which is obviously our body's stress, our main stress hormone. In general, it boosts your immune system overall. And there's many studies that show that after you come home, your stress levels are reduced from anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks after you come back from vacation. That in itself is, a great way to kind of to help you with your stress, because we all have some sort of stress in life. So yeah. So a few of the others is boosting creativity. So travel stimulates, creativity with, again, you're being exposed to different cultures, cuisines, you're trying new foods, you're hearing different languages that maybe people are speaking that you wouldn't hear at home. And then also some, new ideas and perspectives. So like, I'll give you an example. I went on a river cruise and with my mother and my sister-in-law, and we did a Christmas markets, and we learned all about the history. We thought it was just going to be kind of a Christmas markets cruise where we were going to go to the markets and you could, buy all kinds of items that were holiday, Christmassy. And it wasn't. Most of it was very educational. We learned a lot about, about their lives, their everyday lives, but then also the history of, how they became their own, countries when there was, wartime. So that it opens people's minds, and then maybe they come home and think of a better way to do something. And then, and so emotional stability is another one, of course. It increases our happiness most of the time. Hopefully you're going, with someone that you love and that you enjoy being with. So an overall boost, for a lot of people. And even, some researchers have found that females who took vacations twice or more, two or more times a year, are less likely to report symptoms of depression and tension. So that's, in and of itself, a great way to, to get rid of if you're kind of feeling down, and just go on a quick little, getaway.
Yeah. So for all of those people who are living a life and feel like they're too stressed or too busy to take a vacation, maybe you should think about taking a vacation to alleviate some of that stress. And I do know, as a business owner and, somebody who works with other business owners, taking the time off to travel can seem stressful in of itself. Sometimes you feel like you're working twice as hard before you leave, twice as hard when you get back. But, to your point, the benefits of taking that time are really, really important. So a good perspective shift there.
Yeah, I think people don't think about it. And so one of the other things that a benefit of travel is enhancing the cognitive flexibility. I know it seems like, but when I was doing my research a little bit more, I was digging in deeper to all the benefits of travel, because you really don't think about it. And then when you do, it's like the cognitive flexibility of your mind, it switches to all these different things that are happening around you. So another country, has the languages, has the transportation. Your mind is thinking of different ways. And I think a lot of people obviously don't think about that, because when you're in your everyday routine, you get up at the same time, you work out, you do the same thing every day, eat lunch, go to work, come home, for most people, that's their daily routine exercise. And so now when you're going, you're having to use other, brain things in your mind that you have to do. So like unfamiliar environments can, prompt you to think in new ways, or how to do different things to make different decisions that maybe you wouldn't make, at home. So like I use the example of a language. When you go to Mexico, like a lot of Americans go to Mexico, and it's pretty easy because they speak English, but you also hear Spanish, and you have to know a few words to get around. And so that really uses a different part of your brain to have to, communicate in a different language. Mm-hmm. Something that I think people don't think about. And then physical activity in general, like we all, of course, most of us were sedentary for a few years. So some people got in great shape and some people didn't, during that, but it really does promote, physical activity. So you walk a lot more when you're on a vacation or you're traveling, because you have to get from point A to point B. And so a lot of people don't think about that either, about the benefit, just physical benefit of, if you drive in your car a lot, or you're behind a computer, all day, which most people are, then it gets you kind of outside of that computer, looking at our computers all day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm always amazed at the number of steps on my watch when I'm on vacation versus when I'm at home, especially when you travel internationally or to Europe, or even like really big cities like New York, Chicago, all of the walking that you do and all of the walking that really people who live there do all the time. It's very different, than when I have what I would say is just like an average day at home, which is behind a computer. Yeah, unless I'm intentional at home about getting those steps in. They don't look like they do. Vacation.
No, it's so true. You don't think about it until you're there, and you're like, "Wow, I'm doing a lot more." But it's it's fun. So you're you're in a different place, and you don't think about it. So that's one of the benefits. And then the last one I think is the best one is the relationships with your partner, with your family. So if you're going with a group of people that you really love being with, it just, it strengthens that relationship, especially with, if it's a partner or a child or a family member, because you're sharing those memories that you will talk about later. I say, even if some of them are not so good, it's still that memory that you had when, do you remember when we were in, wherever we were? So it kind of fosters that. And then my favorite, really, because I really enjoy this part of travel, is meeting new people. So in our everyday life, we tend to gravitate to the people we already have, relationship with, our friends and our family, our neighbors. But when you travel, you really do have to meet other people. Have to, but that's the part I enjoy, because I like to hear, other people's stories. And, it does make you kind of really think about your life and like what is happening in your life versus, that's kind of, again, that to me, that's the intentional part, is like, I enjoy meeting whoever it is. It could be the waiter at, in a cafe, or, just what is their story? How did they get here, or where are they from originally? So I think that is one of the best parts for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are two things that you said there that are things I would like to highlight, or important things. And one is, if you think about the time that you spend, in your everyday life with your friends, with your family, at cookouts, wherever you are, like the things that you talk about are the experiences that you've had. And so the trips that you've taken, you sometimes can bond over those shared experiences. So, just thinking about like, what do you talk about with your friends or acquaintances? And a lot of times it's travel stories, or talking about the places that you've been or the places that you want to go. So doing more travel gives you more things to talk about in situations like that. More ways and more shared experiences to talk about. That's one. And then the other thing I think is important, and you definitely have to be intentional about it, is the people that you can meet along the way. And your example of like a waiter at a cafe, there are just so many interesting people in this world, and the exposure that you can get to different people's stories and lessons they've learned, or, just incredible experiences. It opens up so much when you stop and take the time to like engage in a conversation or listen to somebody or ask about it. And, I just think that those are like little things that enrich your life, and they give you like more skills and more, just ways of thinking about things, more perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, some people say they don't like to, an introvert. Let's say I'm not an introvert, but I know I have introverts in my life, and it's hard for them sometimes. But I feel like when you're traveling and you're away from your comfort zone, it does make it a little bit easier, because some people think, well, I'm never going to see them again. I can, just ask questions, or I feel like that some people maybe are more open to that. Just because of that reason. I mean, it's like, oh, I'm never going to see them again, or I'd like to know a little bit more about them, and it just kind of makes it maybe a little easier. I mean, always the language part, which people are, sometimes, because people do have, different languages, and also just the dialects of people, especially when you go, outside the country. That is sometimes, a fear for some people. So there's so many different apps that you can use travel.
Yeah. So let's talk about, like traveling and being purposeful about travel. I'm excited to have this conversation, like dig into it with you, because I think from my perspective, what I see a lot is people either going to the same place as everybody else, or going to the same place over and over and over, maybe because it's familiar. So I want to talk about like, how does somebody kind of figure out what they want their travel strategy to be for their life? What kind of travel, what kind of places, and how can they make it more suited towards like who they are and what they want out of life?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually came up with kind of a checklist. So I have questions when somebody comes to me and says, hey, Charlee, I don't know what I want to do. I have no idea. I know, obviously everybody knows what they like to do, right? So even if at home they like to do certain things, usually it kind of spills over to vacation. And there might be some people that'll be a little bit spontaneous, but let's face it, most people, they want to do what they feel comfortable, even, at home, but then also traveling. So like I start with kind of a checklist. It's always the one that you have to start with is the budget, and where, how much money you want to spend. I think that's a good start to it, because if you don't have, really the time and the money are two of the things that really have to, so how much time do you want to spend, and then what your budget is, because then it kind of narrows it down a little bit. But I think that, like you said, a lot of people choose the same place because it has a sort of a comfort to them. Because, they've been and they know it. And, I mean, it's not necessarily for me, but for others, I feel like that's one of the things that likely, probably not you want to try new things and be open, to new travel experiences. So I think a few things, like I said, the budget and then the time spent. Then I think you think of the activities that you like. So like I say, write a list of all the things that you like to do, even maybe at home, that you would want to do on vacation. So that kind of makes it a little bit easier to start. So if you're just a total beach person and you don't want to do culture and you don't want to go to a museum and you don't want to, that sort of thing, then you go to a location where it maybe has a little bit for you to do that, but then it also has some things. And one of the other things I think people don't think about is who they travel with. So their partners. So I think that happens sometimes with couples or families. So there's a few things I'll give an example, a cruise or, an all-inclusive where there's a lot of things to do for like a multi-generation family. So you can do a little bit of all of that and you hit different, the different generations, but then also the different interests. So I think that's one thing. And today there's just so many ways to research. I mean, I have trip planning tools like on my website that tell you, that you can find things to do. I mean, TripAdvisor is a great one, to find things where, you'd want to do just by searching, even of course, we're lucky that we have Google because we can look up things so easily about things and places that you want to go. I mean, like I said earlier, a lot of people now are looking for more mindfulness with like retreats and, places that have like a spa option, where you get some activity, but then, I mean, you might go zip lining, in the daytime. And then in the evening, you go to a nice dinner, has a wine tasting or a wine pairing. I mean, there really is all kinds of options out there these days, more than we've ever had really for travel. So that's a little bit of, I think you start with those two. And then the other thing is, the location of where you're comfortable with, because a lot of people, again, the language barrier, sometimes people, are nervous about it. I mean, the big thing is fear, which, we can get into a little bit more, but a lot of people, that's the main reason, kind of the objection to travel is fear. People just, and it's difficult to figure it out and to plan it. And even though one of the main benefits, not main benefit, but one of the beginning of a travel and to plan it is the excitement and the anticipation of wanting, going on your vacation. So I think a lot of people don't think about that. I think some people may dread that part, but that's where you seek, someone that's an expert or someone that likes to do it. Because I have friends that love to do that part of it. They're like, oh my God, I love to do the, planning part. And so that's the other thing I would say is like, if you're in a relationship or you are a married couple or you have like a big family, choose one person that maybe can be the ringleader and, they kind of start the ball rolling, writing kind of a list of the things that are important to you, when you're traveling. I think that really is number one, the key to doing. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. The example that stands out to me a lot is just, people think of vacations and relaxing. So it's easy to just think of like, where can we go and go to the beach? But when we're talking about enriching your life, maybe you think about, well, only half of our vacations are going to be to the beach from now on because we also want to, expose our kids to different cultures or, learn more or, cross these things off of our bucket list. And so your travel starts to look different. Maybe, while you have young children and, teenagers, maybe the beach is where you go every time because it's easy. It's what the majority of the people who you're with, that's what they want to do. But, opening your mind to think, well, every single time we can go out of town, it does not have to be to the same location. And then how do we kind of like budget for that? How do we plan for it? What is that going to look like for us? And just start to think about it a little bit differently.
Well, I think that the other thing that even a beach, if you think about a beach vacation, you can go to a location that has a beach and, that sort of a thing. But then they also have like a city center or like a cultural area that usually places will have a museum. So those places, and I think that some people don't think about that because it obviously, like you said, they're kind of lasered into, I just need to go and sit on the beach and relax, like we're just going to sit and that's not really how it works. Let's be honest. And, some people that's that's what they want to do, I think that's great. But there's also a time, like you said, for if you have young children and you want them to experience, see other cultures. And maybe, like I said, one of my favorite things to really do is to go to like the downtown or the main part, even like the old part of the town, and see like where it kind of all started. So you see the buildings that are not so modern and are not so, pretty and manicured. But I think that you can incorporate a little bit of all of that when you travel. And like I said, I mean, just researching it, or again, I mean, using someone, a travel agent that can tell you these are the things that you can do in this location, other than just go to the beach. So, well, that's another
Mm-hmm.
way to look at it.
Yeah.
And as it
Yeah.
changes as you
So,
get older as well. And you
mm-hmm.
like you have a little one. So as you grow, you're going to be wanting to do different things.
So that kind of makes me think about, like Nick and I several years ago created like our bucket list of travel destinations that we want to get to at some point in our life. And, I don't know, now that we have a toddler, like I'm really not sure when and what that's going to look like. But do you work with people to kind of figure out like, what are these big bucket list trips?
Right. And so trip planning. Yeah, I do help with that. And I kind of, like I said, like I have my own checklist, but then I talk to them. You'd be surprised how many people really know what they want to do. They just don't know where to start. So like, they're like, I want to go to Australia. I'll give it an example. I mean, that's huge, but it just scares people to say that out loud. Like, I want to go to Australia, but I mean, it is a really long way and I don't even know where to start. So like, that's kind of how I help people, is like, is this something you really want to do? And then that's where it comes in with the, kind of a check, like, okay, well, what is your budget for this trip? How many days can you be gone? And then what is, the most important thing about, let's say, Australia that you want to see, so that kind of helps them start thinking about really what they want to do. And I mean, some people still are like, oh, I have no idea. But you really kind of have to know a little bit. You can't just be, like willy nilly on that, in my opinion, because you want it to be the best trip and you're going to spend, your time and your money and be away from your work. So it's important, it's as important as any, other decisions that you make in your life is, because again, you're taking that time off. So, and then you're also spending money to do these things. And so it's to me, it's just as important to be able to come back and feel like, oh, that was a really great trip and really great, memory too. So, that's another way. I wanted to say the other thing that a lot of people are looking at now is the sustainability and, on going to places that, that basically are giving back. So that's another way of travel that people are doing now, like going to places where they can do, some sort of volunteer work, and so those are other ways that you can, in a place that you go to, like, again, we'll go back to the beach. There are islands that need help, and they have programs like that, where you could go and do kind of I'll give an example of that. It's been years ago, but I went to the Dominican Republic, and they had a program through one of in the cruise industry. And we actually one day they had a floor that was a dirt floor. And they had a program where they went, and obviously all the things that they had ready to make the cement, and then a group of us all made the floor in like a span of a few hours, but we all went as it was an excursion. And for us, it was an excursion. For them, it was a new concrete floor for their very small house. And we met the people that would live there. They had children. It was a mother and a father and their children. And so those are things that, again, for meaningful travel and kind of the mindful, those are things that they help, another person, but they also help you as well to feel like you're giving back. So
yeah, I love that. Especially talk about, exposing your kids to things too, building that in, because to your point, that was a part of a bigger trip. You didn't have to go on a mission trip or something else like that and make it your entire trip. You could do something while you were there. That's a really unique angle, I think, as well.
Yeah. Because
Something
they're
good to think about for sure.
yeah, there's really those kind of, I wouldn't say, I hate to say excursion's the wrong word, but there's those kind of experiences that you can have, yeah, like you said, in a place, especially, well, everywhere, I think, but, like in the Caribbean, for sure we did. And then, some of the countries that need that sort of, they offer that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, yeah. So we've talked a lot about, the benefits of travel, how to kind of decide where you want to travel. I wanted to talk to you about objections that you hear a lot, because what I would like to do in this podcast episode is for people to hear it and think differently about how they're traveling. Maybe if they're choosing not to, or choosing to go to the same place, or, they haven't really thought about travel as a strategy for their life, to kind of just start thinking about it in that way. And so it made me think about, like, what are all the obstacles or the objections or the excuses that people make for not traveling? So what do you hear a lot?
Well, yes. I mean, the top few are kind of going to be obvious to most people. But I say the biggest one is fear, because it all comes back to you're, afraid to spend that money, afraid I'm too busy. I might get behind in my job, those kind of things. I don't have anyone to travel with. Those are some of the big ones. Like I said, the fear one. And my first idea is to write down, if there's any kind of fears that you have with travel, I say to write a list of all of them. So you write them down so you can see them. I'm a big list person. So you can see what, really your fears are. And then I say, just kind of look at it again and again and be honest with yourself. Are these things that could really deter you from, taking a vacation? And, I say to that, to overcome one of those objections to me is to go somewhere that's local, that's like driving distance. So almost like a staycation. So if you really don't have the money to go, and you don't feel like you can afford it, you don't feel like you can take time off during the week, then you take like a long weekend. So like we just have Memorial Day, we have Labor Day, we have July 4th coming, those that you could jump in your car and go somewhere for a few days and at least get away from your comfort. So the other one is money, of course. People always say, well, I can't afford it. I get that all the time in my years. Well, I can't afford to go now. Well, to me, you're never going to, if you can't afford it now, will never be able to, afford it. Or that's how I look at it. So I say have a vacation fund, make an account, just like with anything else that you do, have an account that's just for your vacation and set it aside. And whoever is going on the vacation does the same. And so you kind of, you contribute it to every month, $50, whatever it is. And then you can go. Funny enough, I just had a conversation with my aunt who, she and my uncle and another couple, they would save their money. They would put it all together in a pot, like in a kitty kind of thing. And then when they had enough money together, as they would go together as two couples, and they would go somewhere. I just found this out like last month. And I thought that's a really cool idea. So if it's like a couple that you love to travel with, then you guys put so much money in, and then you go, somewhere that you want to go together, even if it's just a short trip. Like if the money situation, if you can't afford it, then I say, again, go somewhere, for a long weekend, a short 2 or 3 night getaway. And a lot of people, again, use that excuse. Well, then you have to eat, and you have to stay in a hotel, and there is a lot of free, there really are a lot of free things to do. You can go to a park. You can go, like I mentioned, the city center and just walk around. You can go hiking, in a destination that has a mountain. Biking, I mean, you may have to rent a bicycle, but it's minimal. And then, of course, we go back to the beach and the ocean. I mean, that's pretty simple. You go and you can have a day and swim and, frolic in the waves. So those are the main ones. And then the busy, too busy. A lot of people, and I felt it for years, of course, because you have your career, and I was in sales. So it was obviously driven, my financial stability was driven by my, getting the sales and helping agents. I worked with travel agents to grow their business. So you just don't want to be away because you don't want to miss that, what if something happens? And I think that's one of the hardest ones. I don't know that one's hard. I think one of the big things is to do, the tasks that you can do before you go. So you kind of try to get as much done before you go on vacation. So you have all of that kind of done ahead of time. Then the other thing I think that people are on their phones, all the time, obviously, even on vacation. And I don't recommend it, but I say, if you really have to work, you set aside a few hours, like let's say 2 hours early in the morning. Like you, when your daughter, right, was sleeping early in the morning, you and your husband do what you have to do before it's time to, start your day. And I know that's not the perfect case scenario, but I just think that's one thing to me on a vacation and traveling is being mindful of being on that device all the time, which we're all guilty of it. But to me, that's kind of one of those things that I think a lot of people need to stop and they need to look around at where they are. And I think we all don't do that enough. Even adults, even seniors, that are on their phone all the time. I'm like, just stop and look around at where you are,
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there are pros and cons to the working on vacation thing. It may be a situation where being able to set aside an hour or two a day and work allows you to take more vacations or allows you to take a longer vacation. Like there may be pros to it, but I do think it's like everything else, you should stop and think about, like, do I have to be doing this? Why am I doing this? What would happen if I'm not doing this? And just, evaluate, is it actually necessary, or is it just something that you're doing because it's a habit or you're letting it creep in to every part of your life? So just another plug there for being really intentional about it.
Right. And I think that sometimes is, it's difficult. For especially people, that are really driven and the type A that have to be always, I got to be on and available. And I think that there's some boundaries, especially on vacation. Now, as you probably know, a lot of people obviously work remote, so you can work from anywhere in the world. And even I've done it myself. And it's great, but I think you still have to have, that boundary of, I'm going to work from this hour to this hour, and I'm going to work really hard during those hours. And then I can take time off in the evening or go for lunch, like an hour or two lunch. Let's face it, Europeans and a lot of countries do this, in their everyday life. They take the afternoon, off to enjoy their family and to go have, a coffee and as Americans, we're not so good at that, but it just kind of is, I think, especially when you're away and you're on vacation, take that time and, to be mindful. And I think especially of the other people that are in here, I think that's the hardest part. It's not really for yourself as much, but it's really for the people that you're traveling with. It is, if you're a solo traveler, I think it's important too, because it gives you, some time alone and to kind of reflect on your own, kind of self, worth and what you're there for. But I feel like sometimes people that are traveling together, they tend to use that as an excuse. Well, I have to work, I have to check my email. And I think that's something that we all have to be, like you said, more intentional of being.
Yeah. So what about people who have, I think about people who have spouses who maybe, they're always like, well, my spouse doesn't fly and I don't like to drive in a car, so we can't really decide on any place to go. Or we have young kids and, that's not really, I don't want to travel internationally with them or whatever. So what are the types of things that you talk to people about in those situations to help them not have to sacrifice what they want necessarily as a part of their travel?
Right.
Because they have people who maybe don't want the same things as them.
Yeah. So that is difficult. Because obviously there are people that don't fly. So they take a train or a ship. There's a couple of different options. So I have someone in particular that I know that she travels on a transatlantic of the ocean to get to Europe. Because she doesn't want to fly. I know a couple of people actually that do that. So there are ways to get around it. I would say if you have, again, you kind of, like in life, we have to compromise. So I feel like some of it is compromising. So if you will, like someone that doesn't fly, well, can we drive to this destination? And some people, will get to different destinations in different ways. So let's say that one doesn't fly, they can take, a train or a ship or another mode of transportation, and then the other person flies there. I know people that do this too. And for different reasons. I know it's unconventional. But yes, I feel like that there are ways to get around that. But at the end of the day, you want to be, together, and you want to do things. So, like I'll take you back to the beach option. I mean, not everybody wants to go to the beach. I mean, I live in Florida, and you do too. I rarely go to the beach, honestly. I love it, and I love being that it's so close, but I know it's crazy, but I don't. But there are a lot of people that don't love that. They want to go to a resort, and they want to do, all the things that are there, but they don't love, the beach. They want the pool, they want the, that sort of thing. So I think you compromise that with going somewhere that maybe there's a couple of different options for, like for couples or for a family. That's really going to be my, suggestion. It is difficult, I think, to do that because either people are going to feel really strongly about one, destination they want to go to. And sometimes that, I feel like that I tell people, well, if you want to do something else together that you both want to do, then here's how we proceed. Because obviously not everybody wants to go, on a girls' trip to, let's say, Savannah or to, Charleston to go shopping. So that would be something that you could do, but then how you tie it in with the, the men is something in that destination that has something that they would want to do too. So I feel like that it is a difficult scenario, at times. And sometimes I say people, well, let's do this vacation with, the one that you want to do. And then we do the one that maybe your husband wants to do, so maybe you share, you split it up. So you have two, and then you make it maybe a smaller trip, maybe a few days, here. And then if you only have a week, then, that's tough. So maybe you do, 3 or 4 days over a long weekend, and then you do another trip that's 4. So I know couples that, do that too.
Yeah.
I think that again, it goes
always
back to kind of compromising a little bit. And that's one of them that can be difficult to, to get through. But I feel like if you love your significant other, that you'll be open to it. But, it's a sometimes can be an expensive, vacation with all of the ins and outs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have some questions for you, some travel questions. Okay. If it's good with you, I'll just start throwing them your way.
Okay.
I'm sure the answer to this question is very broad and it depends upon a lot of things, but if you had to pick, like, what are people spending on vacations right now? If we break it up into like maybe a few different groups, like domestic, international, or Europe or whatever, but like how much are people spending on a vacation? So if somebody listening is thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to start to be more intentional about my travel. How much money do I even need to save to be able to take a trip like this?
Okay. Got it. So, yeah, well, a domestic trip, obviously between the two is going to be quite different. But I would say, travel is definitely up. People are traveling more, but then travel is more expensive. So airline tickets are definitely have gone up, and they are. And of course, this time of year is going to be the most expensive because summertime is always. So starting now, really June, July, August are the most expensive months really to travel, just because obviously people can travel during the summer and people have kids, teachers, there's no school, that sort of thing. So, but it just again, it depends on your budget. It's so hard to answer this question because if you're going to go on kind of a minimal, something, if you're going to do a short one and like a 3 or 4 day and you're going to stay in a hotel that's kind of a mid-range, then you're going to need, $1,000. I would say, hotels are, you can get something that's less, but I would say if you're just in general, I would say anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500. That would be that's a big spread. And that depends on, that's just domestic and that's somewhere that could be, just where you could drive to. And that's not really even airfare because airfare is usually $300 to $500, like round trip. Again, depending on where you go. Now international is going to be, I say $5,000 just out of the gate for like a couple. That's minimal because I've just done a couple. So I'm kind of going back, like someone is going to London for a week and they're spending about 8 grand and about $8,000. And that's not even high end. That's kind of middle of the, I mean, you can do the bottom layer, which is fine. I mean, there's hostels and there's ways you can do it on a budget. So it just really depends on what, obviously what your tastes are and what you can spend or what you want to spend. So
I know it's hard, just, trying to give people at least a starting point or a way to think about it. If I want to take 2 vacations a year, and this is my overall budget, like how could I divide that up between maybe getting in a bucket list trip and maybe just something that's more of like a getaway? What are trips that you have seen people take that can be really amazing that I would say like people just don't always think about as an option for themselves?
They don't think of it as an option? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Someplace like when you see these amazing trips and you probably see a lot more than we're exposed to, but what are some things that people could do that they probably aren't even thinking about doing?
Well, I think that some people don't think about like places that have a little bit, again, like we kind of talked about, that have a little bit of everything. So you can drive, I'm trying to think of something like, let me give you an example, like Santa Fe. Like I've been to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I don't know why that comes to mind. And it's not something that people think about, Santa Fe or New Mexico, like in general. I don't know, but they have a lot of history. So, it's a very old city. But then there's the mountains that you can go, even in the winter, you could go and ski. That's close enough where you could actually go ski there. But in the summer, I didn't go during ski season. But then in the town, it's very old. They have markets where you can go and you can buy for shopping. It's great for shopping. I do like to shop. And then there's the history of it. So a museum, and they have several really good museums. They have an art gallery street that is tons of art galleries. So it kind of encompasses a little bit of everything because they have the hiking. So they have outdoor activities, but then they have kind of the culture, and then they have shopping, and then they have great, cuisine if you like that cuisine. Like, I don't know, that's an example. One of the other things that I think people don't think about is the national parks. I mean, those are great places to go to get all of that. You get the exercise, you get, a little bit of everything, especially for families, and you get to go and, it's minimal to get into the park. I mean, you can buy a park pass for a year if you do a bunch. So, I mean, like I would give that as an example for somebody that, they want to get away, like, one weekend a month. I mean, there's a national park, I think in every state. I mean, I don't know all of them. But I know I went to several when I was in Utah, Nevada, that area of the country. And so it was, within the US, it was a great way to see a bunch of different national parks. And then you get, the exercise. So those are a couple of things I think. I think even in a big city, like any of the big cities, like New York. I mean, everybody wants to go to New York City. Even in New York City, there are those little areas that that people don't necessarily go. So I think you look at things that are outside of what is the big draw. So like, hidden gem. So you go to Paris. Yes, everybody wants to see the Eiffel Tower, but there are all those little other places, in the area that you can see and do. I think you kind of seek those out. There's a lot of resources when it comes to, find that today for us, a lot of that. So.
Yeah. Where is your favorite place you've ever traveled?
Oh, I know. I get that question all the time. It's really hard to answer. I know people ask me. So I can give you a couple. In the Caribbean, I love St. John and the U.S. Virgin Islands because it's still pristine. It's still kind of untouched. I mean, they did have a hurricane a few years ago, but they have rebuilt it back. And so I love St. John and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The other one down there is Tortola, or the British Virgin Islands, which is amazing. Those are a couple in the Caribbean, I would say. Now, I know it's so hard. In Europe, I love Italy and Greece. Those are two of my favorites. But then I love doing Scandinavia. I did Scandinavia as well, and it's beautiful. So, yeah, I mean, those are a few. It's hard. People ask me this all the time, and I'm like, I guess I just need to come up with one answer. But yeah, I just like to try. I find something, positive and good about the location. There's good about every place. So I know that's a tough one for me.
A couple more things I want to ask before we are at time and wrap up, but do you have any like really good packing or travel hacks or tips?
Yeah, in general, well, I think for packing, I mean, there's so much, I would say, controversy in packing, because some people use the cubes, and some people say no to cubes. I haven't used the cubes, the packing cubes. A lot of people swear by them. So I say I'm going to try them, and then I never do. So I need to try the packing cubes. But I think rolling, that's one for me, one thing for for packing in suitcase is rolling your clothes. So I think that always is something that I've learned to do. And I mean, again, less is more. I mean, I know people that take loads and loads, and I'm guilty of it. And then you don't wear half of it. You tend to wear, just certain things that are your favorites. My one suggestion is when you take everything out that you're going to pack, and then take away half of it. And that's really what you should take. So that's always been a tip.
Okay.
For me, is take basically like half of what you put out. So like those shoes that you're probably not going to wear, but just in case, but you're probably not going to wear them. So I would say, be practical especially with footwear. If you're going somewhere where you're walking a lot, and even if you're not, I mean, just comfortable pair of shoes. I mean, I've gotten to where I only take like 3 pair of shoes, one, like a sneaker type or running, walking shoe, and then some sort of sandal, flip flop, and then a nice, dress shoe for the nighttime. And I mean, you really can get away with that. So I would say that is one of my kind of a packing tip. And then for travel in general, I would just, be organized which is taking me time, but, be organized when you're traveling to the airport or to even in a car trip. I mean, because you don't want to be frantic and be like, oh my gosh, did I do that? Did I turn the oven off? Some people create a checklist, again, that checklist of all the things that they need to do before they leave. So, because I think once you leave, you really need to start your vacation instead of worrying about all the things. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I didn't send somebody an email, or I didn't, take the trash out, or, oh, it's going to smell when we get home, things like that. So I think like a checklist before you actually leave is a good idea.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all been there where we're worried about doing something, but we have left to go on a trip, and, a day later, our neighbors are texting us like, do you know the garage is open? And it's like, So I would definitely recommend a checklist. Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. I would like to talk about like, what is it? So tell us a little bit more about like what you do, what it's like to work with you, and what the benefit of working with somebody who helps you plan travel.
Okay. So I work with excuse me. The best way to find me is on, my website, and then there's a contact me, so somebody can, and I'm on, the social media channels as well to find me. But really, the reason that I started with my own business was to kind of inspire people, because I had traveled so much, and everybody, asked me a lot about traveling. And since I worked with travel agents in my past, my career, most of my career was working with travel agents to grow their own business. So it really was to inspire people to, like I said, to get out there and see the world. But then also to be, mindful of where you go. I mean, like you said, don't just go to, just anywhere just to get away. I mean, really and truly, especially now, I think that it's better to have, kind of a plan and be a little more mindful of where you go. I mean, I believe in spontaneity as well, but I think that there's a way to do it. And so I really kind of help people to decide so kind of the planning part. And then I have some resources. Like I said earlier, I have a few resources. So I work actually with travel agents, and then I kind of decide, like we have a conversation, like you and I would have a conversation and say, okay, Kelly, where, kind of, first of all, what's your budget? How long do you want to be gone? And then what are, again, like your activities? What are the things that you want to do on your vacation? I mean, what would give you most pleasure being on vacation? And then I come up with usually 3 to 4, or, people, obviously some of the agents that I work, like the land agent that I work with, she kind of comes up with 3 different options, 3 different locations. And so like, I'll say, I think this would be good. So we kind of work together, and then we kind of make a decision, and then we send something, to you, and then you kind of look at, and we kind of have an A, B, and C, really. So you don't get too overwhelmed with a lot of, because that's what people tend to do is, they get overwhelmed because they don't know where to start, and they're like, oh, I want to go to all these different places. And at the end of the day, you're like, well, this may not be a good option for you, either because you don't have the financial means, or, you may be disappointed. So, those are kind of, and then again, always the financial part is the difficult one, because everybody, you really have to have a budget. And some people say, oh, I don't have a budget. I'm like, no, you have to know what you can spend, because it'll be disappointing if you see something that costs $5,000 and you don't have $5,000 to spend on your vacation. So that's where we kind of work too. And I just use, just the knowledge that I have from my experience, but then I obviously I do my research, and if somebody, wants to do something that I haven't done, obviously I still have a bucket list too, but there are different ways to help them. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so does it cost people to work with you?
It does not. If it is an international trip, then we do charge kind of like a flat, you get it back, but like if it's an international, it's a little more, because we really don't do air, because air's just, most people want to do their own because they either have points, or they want to use their points, or they just want to be in control of that part of it, of the air part. So but an international trip is usually, it depends, but basically $100. Just to put down to start the process, and then you get that back when you complete the trip, and we do all the kind of work.
Okay.
So for the most part, I know that is a misconception of some people, that in general, travel agents, if you have a travel agent, and anyone listening has a travel agent, continue to use them. I think it's important, because a lot of them are small businesses, and so they will receive, they don't receive the income from you, but from the suppliers. So I think a lot of people don't know that, maybe that they are actually getting a commission from the cruise line or the travel company, so the tour operator. So if that helps, because some people want to do it all themselves and think that they're going to have to spend a lot of money for someone to plan for them. That's just not the case. So
yeah. Definitely. They
need an account, a bank account or something for their, or a piggy bank, whatever it is that, for travel. So I think unfortunately a lot of people, one of the stats I read, like people take 15 days, I think, of their 15 days of vacation in a year. That's it in the US. I think the US is obviously we're guilty of not taking vacation days. But I think it's
way behind.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Is there anything else about travel or anything that you'd like to share we haven't gone over?
Oh, I have a quote that I wanted to share, actually. Okay. I have a quote that I found that I love, and I think that I'll end with that. I want to say it correctly. It was actually from the Prophet Muhammad from 1400 years ago. I found it, and his quote was, "Don't tell me how educated you are. Tell me how much you've traveled." So I think that's great.
Yeah.
From 1400.
I love that.
Yeah. So I think you obviously can do, you can travel and get a lot of education by traveling, which I think that people don't think about. But so it's, another way to have intention when you travel. You can learn about different cultures, cuisines, all types, language, everything. So I think that's the best way to, one of the best ways to educate yourself.
Definitely. Yep.
Thank you, Kelly.
And then I have some end of the podcast questions that I would like to ask you. Yeah. So 2 of them. The first one is, what is something that you would like to accomplish personally or professionally this year?
Well, I think to continue to grow my business, because I'm a small business and it's been 2 years, two and change. So I'd like to continue to grow that and find other ways to grow. I enjoy being on podcasts. So when anybody has a podcast, I'm like, I love you guys. I really enjoy talking about travel. So probably that would be one of them. And then I have a few trips planned. So I'd like to have more. I'd like to travel more. I know that sounds so, but to really work on getting some more brand partnerships. So that's really probably my biggest goal. Yeah.
The second question is, how do you unwind?
Well, I like going to the spa, believe it or not. So I normally spend my birthday, which I know you just had one. I normally spend my birthday. I like to go to the spa. So whether it be, a luxury spa or just a massage, or to take time to kind of even with someone, but I really don't mind doing it by myself because it's kind of just, it kind of makes me, great. And I've started meditating. So I have a meditation app that I'm using. And so I do that usually in the morning. I did it this morning, and I'm trying to do it even once a day, either in the morning or the evening, to really try to meditate. And I was going to bring that up in our conversation because I think it's a good way for people that have travel anxiety. I think that if you have some anxiety before you travel, which people do, just because of the, just because they're uncomfortable, whatever it is, there's all kinds of ways. I think it's a good way I think meditation is a good way to maybe calm your anxiety. So I guess, those are the two.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other way is I visit my mother, who I love dearly. And when I'm with her and I do things with her, it's kind of I step back from all the life throws at us. So I guess that'd be another one. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I love all of those. I too love the spa. I don't do as much of that I would like to, but it's something that I love to do when I'm traveling, for sure. Awesome. Well, this has been great. I think some insightful things that we can share with people, and definitely just hopefully people will just start to think about being more intentional with their travel and how to make it part of their life and part of their family's lives, and just get out there more. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, Charlee.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. It's truly an honor to help bring these conversations to you. I do have a couple of quick favors to ask of you. While you're listening to an episode, could you take a screenshot and post that to your Instagram stories and tag me at Life Intended Podcast? And just let me know what your favorite takeaways were or what you liked about the episode. It really helps me to learn more about what you love and want to see more of. And if you have a few extra minutes, if you'd go to iTunes or wherever you listen, I'd love it if you could leave me a rating and review. Ratings and reviews are one of the best ways new listeners can find the show, and I'd love nothing more to grow this and help more people live a life intended. See you again here next week.